Hi everybody, drawninjakc here, and today I'm going to be working with oil paints. Just one little problem. I've never used oil paints before. That intro was not very far from the truth because my head may very well explode trying to find a way to figure out how to oil paint. Simply because I've never used oil paint before. It's a bit of a step out of my comfort zone, which I like. I really enjoy trying new mediums and kind of challenging myself, but I've heard stories that oil paint is a different animal. And these particular oil paints I got from Michael's about 2 years ago. If you look at them, you'll see that they're already dripping oil all over. Like the oil is like seeping out of them. So they've been in my art bin for quite some time. It's just that I just haven't had the desire to use them. But I need a challenge. I need something to put a little pep in my step, like catfish, if you will. Being that this is my first time, just, feel free to not judge me too harshly on the outcome of this piece of artwork I'm going to do. I am very excited about trying these out because honestly, I paid $5 and I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I got 12 of them from Michael's. I think they were on sale or they were having a clearance or whatever. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that they're not the highest quality. I always say it's not well, sometimes it's the medium and the quality of the medium, but a great artist can still make great art with low quality medium. It's a fact. Okay, so without further ado, let's see what I can do with these $5 paints that I've never used before. Wish me luck. So this is Gamsol. It's a liquid spirit that's used to dilute the paint, and also it's used like turpentine to clean off your brushes, and it's odorless, and you have to use it in a well ventilated area because although it's odorless, the fumes can still be toxic, so you don't want to basically have this thing under your nose while you're working. And here is my inspiration for today's painting: the Bane action figure from the Batman cartoon series a few years back. I really love this action figure. These are my brushes that I'll be working with, mostly small tip brushes. And this is the illustration board that I'll be working on. It is actually a pretty nice illustration board. It's a multimedia art board. This is a good brand. They're not that expensive, and it's also made for oil paints. Why do I keep saying oil paints? It sounds like I'm saying Earl paints. It's made for oil paints as well as other mediums. So I'm gonna go in on this artboard because I've got a ton of them and see how this painting actually takes to it. Okay, so now that we have Bane all penciled out, I'm gonna start with his eyes, and immediately, even starting with his eyes, the first thing that I learned about oil paints, there I go, oil paints. Oil paints. The first thing I learned about oil paints is that it is very opaque. Even this kind of low quality oil paint is very opaque. So you really don't need layering in order to make certain areas darker or create deep shadows at all. The shadows and the highlights are created by the paint colors themselves. So if you need a darker shadow, you have to mix that color. Layering over a already painted on area to make it darker is just not a concept that will flow well with oil paints, because because of how opaque it is. If you put the same color over that, it's going to be just the same color. So you have to mix. If you want a different shade, a different hue or a darker hue, you have to mix that and then put that either next to it or on top of the color that you already placed. And it's very important to understand that if you are going to place color on top of color, that you lay down a thin coat first. Because the rule here, and based on my research, I've discovered that thick goes over thin. And that's how it'll work, because in order to get the paint to flow very well, this way the thin paint doesn't really pick up and mix too much with the thick paint. Because if you have a lot of thick paint, if you put a lot of thick paint down first, what you're going to end up with is, when you put down the thin paint on top of that, is the paint colors mixing, and you don't want that. You don't want paint colors mixing. You want paint colors to blend, but you don't want paint colors to mix. And again, with the blending, which is, as you see I'm doing with this arm right now, I've discovered a very interesting about blending. Because the oil paint doesn't dry right away, it takes days for this thing to dry, which is a good thing and can be a bad thing too. But it takes days for this thing to dry. So what I'm doing here is putting down big globs of areas where there's highlights, there's midtones, and there's shadows. Now I'm putting them down separately and then going back in to blend them with another brush. So I'm able to do that because the paint doesn't dry. It stays nice and wet. And then once I put down the big globs of highlights, shadows, and midtones, I go back in and blend them to my discretion, which is a fantastic way about going about it. Now the bad thing about it not drying so fast in comparison to acrylic is that, at least for me, this is from my experience, and I don't know if you do this as well, but from my experience, I like to draw or paint even with the canvas laying down. And with oil paints, you see most people who use oil paints will have the canvas standing up. And whatever canvas or illustration board I'm using, I like to have it laying down. I feel I have more control that way of my hand and of the paintbrush and of the medium. So that's just my preference and how I feel more comfortable. A lot of people stand it up. And for a person like myself who lays it down, I have to start, as I did with this picture, I had to start from the left side and work over towards the right side, because if I didn't, because the paint doesn't dry, the painting would get smudged all over the place, because my hands would be, as you see here, my hands would be all over the illustration board while I'm painting. So you have to take your weaknesses and your strengths into consideration when using oil paints. What's the best way for you to approach an oil paint, starting from the way you position the canvas or the illustration board or whatever you're drawing on, all the way to what would be the most difficult part for you to paint, whether it be the face, the arms, the muscles, the shadows, the highlights. Work that all out so that when you do start to paint your masterpiece, that you don't run into any problems that you have to troubleshoot on the way. And most artists know, if you're realistic with yourself, most artists know their strengths and their weaknesses, so they're able to basically figure it out and work it out before they start the painting, which I was able to do here. I was able to detect that, okay, I'm not going to be able to do this while it's standing up, and it works better for me while laying down. So I'm just going to have to start all the way from the left, work the way over to the right. I started with the face. As you can see at the top there, I started with the face because for me, it was a point of, if this painting is going to be any kind of quality, then I'll know by the end of doing the face. So I did the face first to make sure that I'm able to kind of grasp some sort of realism from using oil paints, because I am using this for the first time. So I figured if I can't even do the face of Bane, then I'm not even going to go ahead and finish with this, because it's just not even worth it. But I was very happy with the face, because even for the first moment that I put down the colors on the face, I was already feeling that, okay, I think I'm gonna work more with oil paints, because I love the results. And this is not even a high quality oil paint. This is, like I said, I paid like $5 and I got 12. So my thoughts from doing the face is that I can motivate myself to go further, because now I want to see, what's in store for the rest of Bane. And while painting the body, I followed a particular method, and I did do some research before heading into this video. I didn't want to just go in not knowing anything in this experiment. So I did watch a lot of oil painting videos and oil painting masters and how they approached their paintings, and everybody does it differently. And that's what I realized. You as an artist have to develop your own approach to painting, but there are certain rules you'll have to follow. Like, I did put down the thin layers and then the thick over it, but mostly what I did, I would always just go with the midtones, the shadows, and then the highlights. But I would lay them down separately. As you can see I'm doing here, I would lay them down separately and then go back in and blend them afterwards, which worked really well for me, because that was the wonderful thing about this paint not drying right away, is that I can just lay down all different sorts of colors and areas and then just blend them seamlessly with the brush, which worked really well. And because the paint is so opaque, I could color over another color and it can completely disappear. It would need a little time to dry, yes, because if you blend it over the other color, it would mix a little bit. But if it's a darker color over a lighter color, that lighter color will completely disappear. So even if I made a mistake, I can go back in right then and there and cover that mistake, which was very cool. And as far as putting lights over darks, now for this particular painting, and it could be the quality of the paints, but I know, like when I did the mask, I had to wait for the black to dry for like a day or maybe a day and a half in order to get those really sharp highlights on it. So anytime I had to put highlights, white highlights on any area, I had to wait for a day for it to dry in order for the bottom layer to be hard enough in order to take the highlights, because if not, then the whites would actually blend with whatever color it was underneath it, and then it would be just like a darker white of the color that's underneath it. So my method was always to, whenever I did shadows and whenever I did midtones and when I needed to do deep highlights, wait for the paint to dry for one day and then put in the white highlights with the white paint, and it worked splendidly. And as you see, I am wearing these blue gloves. I started the drawing without the gloves, but the paint felt a little funny. The oil paint felt funny on my hand, and then I would touch something and it would get somewhere, so I just put on the gloves. I know I'm asking for trouble when I ask this, but how do you guys think I did for my first time using oil? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks a lot for watching, and if you are new to this channel, please like this video and subscribe. Thank you.